Hi, I'm Cheryl Ann from Cherrylene's Cupcakes, and today I'm going to show you how to bake these golden lime biscuits. They are basically crunchy butter cookies with a tangy zing of lime drizzled with white chocolate and painted over with edible luster dust to create that beautiful gold shine on your cookies. It is a bit of a time-consuming process painting all of your cookies gold, so maybe you might want to just leave the golden ones for the really extra special people in your life. But then again, painting them gold is completely optional and they still look just as beautiful with just the white chocolate. Anyways, enough talking, let's get straight into it! So you'll need half a cup, which is 113 grams of softened unsalted butter, the egg white of 1 large egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 3/4 of a cup of confectioner's sugar, you may also know this as powdered or icing sugar, 2 limes that are approximately 85 grams each. It doesn't need to be exactly 85 grams, just a couple limes that aren't too big and aren't too small, and they need to be able to produce at least 2 tablespoons of lime juice, and you'll need the zest of these 2 limes. And you'll need 1 1/4 cups of plain flour minus 1 tablespoon and replace that with 1 tablespoon of corn flour. You'll also need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and finally a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Firstly, start by placing your softened unsalted butter into a large mixing bowl and then sift in your confectioner's sugar. You really want to make sure you do this part because confectioner's sugar really has a tendency to always clump up, so sifting it in will help to break down any of the clumps. And using the back of a spoon can help to push in any bits that don't fall through. Once that's done, using an electric hand mixer or stand mixer, you want to start beating it on a low speed so that the sugars don't just start poofing around and flying all over your counter. So you want to just continue beating that on a low speed for about 3 to 5 minutes until your mixture kind of comes together and looks something like this. Then you switch it on to high and keep beating that until everything looks really smooth and creamy. And then you just scrape down the sides, and as you can see, the mixture is kind of firm but really smooth and creamy. So to that, just add in your vanilla essence and give it a rough mix. And then just add in your egg white, and you want to beat that for about 3 to 5 minutes until everything is thoroughly combined and whipped properly, and it should look something like this. It's really quite a firm and thick mixture. So now just rinse and pat dry your 2 limes, and then using the smallest hole on your grater, you want to grate the outer skin of your limes. Be careful not to over grate it such that you get the white fibery bits inside your mixture. You want to just grate the outer green surface of the lime into your butter mixture. And be careful not to get in the 2 ends of your lime because you don't want to grate in the little stem pieces on the 2 ends over here. And so once you're happy with that, don't forget to use your finger and scrape against the direction that you were grating your lime. So you scrape it against to pick up all of the pieces of the zest that have been stuck on the grater. Don't forget to turn it around as there would be more that is stuck behind. So just push that all into your bowl and you should see plenty of beautiful bright green inside your butter mixture. And now you just cut your limes into half, and as you can see here, my limes were kind of hard to squeeze because they were fresh out of the fridge. So what you're going to do is just put it into a bowl and you microwave that on high for about 20 seconds, and you should see that it becomes a lot softer. You want to wait for it to cool for just like a minute or so before you just squeeze that into your tablespoon measurements and try to make up about 2 tablespoons worth of the lime juice. You can also use like those bottled lime juice, but obviously using fresh limes are gonna give you a lot tastier and yummier biscuits. So once you've created this little lime river inside your butter mixture, just give it a good mix so that all of your bits of lime is evenly distributed throughout. To that, just sift in your dry ingredients of your plain flour, corn flour, baking soda, and baking powder, using a spoon to push in the rest of the baking soda. and then roughly mix it until your mixture looks kind of crummy, and it should look something like this. And now, because the mixture is still quite sticky, you want to use a spatula or a wooden spoon to just press on it slightly to try to just combine all of the little bits together so that they come together in one firm dough. And then once it reaches to about this point, you can use your hands to just further knead it a little bit before transferring it onto a thoroughly floured surface. You really want to put about half a handful of flour on there at a time, because the mixture is still really wet, has a lot of moisture in it, so putting the flour there will help to prevent it from sticking onto your hands as much. But don't put too much, of course, just about half a handful. And then just gently knead that by pushing in the sides and pressing it down gently. And so on the sides and down, you can add more flour as you go along, as you can see what I'm doing here. So you just keep doing that for about 5 minutes until the dough stops sticking to your hand as much, and then just grab some cling wrap and wrap it up and stick it into the fridge for about 10 minutes until the dough firms up slightly so that it will be easier to work with later on. So once you get it firm enough, similar to here, you don't want it too hard, but probably get it a little bit firmer than how I got it. You can tell that I was a little bit too excited to get filming, so I was kind of impatient waiting. So you just portion off about half of it to work with at a time, and you can stick the remainder back into the fridge. You don't want it to be solid rock hard, but just firm enough such that it wouldn't be all sticky when you knead it out. So once you get it out of the fridge, you want to just sprinkle a tiny bit more flour and just knead it a little bit, like a couple of times before you roll it out onto a thoroughly floured surface. Make sure that every time you knead or roll it, it's going to be a thoroughly floured surface, and that you thoroughly flour your rolling pin as well, because the dough is quite sticky and it will stick if there isn't enough flour preventing it from sticking. So now you want to roll it out till it's about 3 to 5 millimeters thick, and you want to constantly make sure you flour your rolling pin so that it doesn't stick. Once you're happy with that, dust some flour over the surface and gently run your hands along the top part just to make sure that your dough is evenly rolled out. Once that's done, just use your cookie cutter, whatever shape you prefer, and just stick it into some flour and then start cutting out your shapes. The reason why you want to dunk it in some flour first is just so that the dough doesn't stick onto your cookie cutter as you try to pull it out. So once you finish cutting out all of your cookie shapes, you just repeat the process until you finish cutting up all of your dough. And if you have difficulty trying to remove what you've cut off your rolling board, just use a really thin spatula or ladle kind of thing. Like here, I'm just using what I use to flip my pancakes, and you just gently scrape it like what I'm doing here to just lift it up and transfer it over to your baking tray lined with baking paper. During this time, make sure your oven is preheated to 170 degrees Celsius, and you want to bake that in the middle section of your oven for about 10 minutes, just until the sides of your cookies start to slightly brown. And once your cookies have been sitting in your oven for about 5 minutes, you want to turn your tray around so as to ensure more even baking, and you will know your biscuits are completely done when they look something like this, where it's just very slightly brown on the edges, and when you press on them, they feel quite firm, but they'll continue to firm up more as they cool down. So now just transfer all of this onto a cooling rack and go on to heat up your white chocolate. You'll need 130 grams of white chocolate that you should melt in 2 separate parts of 65 grams each, so that they don't just firm up again while in your bag if you're drizzling your chocolate over it halfway, because it's happened to me. So heating it up in 2 separate parts will help prevent that. So you want to stick it into your microwave and heat it on high for 10 to 15 second intervals, and stir it around after each interval. And you will know that your chocolate is melted enough when it looks something like this, where there are still a few chunks of softened chocolate in there, but you just keep on stirring it around, and the heat from the bowl and the already melted chocolate will help to melt those little bits. And keep stirring it until your chocolate looks really smooth like this. So now just pour your chocolate into one end of a Ziploc bag, or you can use a piping bag, and scraping down the bowl to try to get as much of the chocolate in there as possible. And then you just pinch the spoon off at the end, twist your bag a couple of times, or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and then you just cut off a tiny little hole at the end. You really don't want to cut too big a hole because then your chocolate's gonna ooze everywhere and it's gonna be hard to drizzle. So you just cut a really small hole like in here until a tiny little bit of the chocolate comes out, and then you just drizzle it all over your completely cooled biscuits. And once they're completely dry, you're ready for the fun part of painting them gold. So here I've got some edible luster dusts. You should be able to find these in baking supply stores, and they're available in a range of different colors. They are typically used for sugar crafts. And so what you're going to do here, like all I'm going to use now is the golden ones because they are so beautiful when you paint them on. So you just pour a little bit into a clean dish and put some water in there and make it kind of like a paste. Also ensure that the paintbrush you are using is only used for food stuff and has been thoroughly cleaned with some alcohol or something. And when it looks something like this, where it's kind of like a paste, this is sufficient to paint just one cookie, by the way, so you gotta just repeat the process. And when it looks like this, you're just ready to just paint it onto your biscuits. So here you can see how easily it just glides on, and as you can see, the first time you paint it, it might miss some spots, like it might not be able to cling onto your biscuit as easily. So once the first coat of gold dries, you can just go over it again until you are satisfied with how gold you've made your biscuits. And there you have it, that is how you make these golden lime biscuits. I hope this video has been helpful to you guys, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and till next time, I'm Cheryl N from Cherry Lane's Cupcakes.